Hey guys, if you have pelvic floor dysfunction, which includes the following issues:
Premature ejaculation,
erectile dysfunction,
constipation,
incontinence,
dribbling,
weak orgasms or ejaculations,
hemorrhoids or fissures,
pain with erections or ejaculations.
then it's likely that you have pelvic floor dysfunction.
In this video, we are going to help you assess whether or not you have pelvic floor dysfunction, and then we're going to tell you which exercises you should do to fix it. You guys might already know me, Dean, Manful Yoga. This is our guest. This is Lance Frank. He is a physical therapist and a pelvic floor specialist, and we're going to be getting deep into the pelvic floor today to talk about common issues and how to address them. So, first thing you need to know about pelvic floor dysfunction is that not all exercises will help. Depending on the issue, you might actually be making things worse. So the first thing to do is to identify which pelvic floor dysfunction you have, if you have it, and then we can tell you which exercises to do. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lance, and he's going to talk about how pelvic floor dysfunction can be classified into one of two categories.
So yeah, pelvic floor dysfunction can typically be classified into two different types. Usually there's an underactive pelvic floor. These people tend to be in the older age demographic, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they just need a little bit more strengthening, or they might be some sort of cancer, prostate cancer survivor. The people in the overactive pelvic floor camp generally tend to be the younger age demographic, 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s, high-strung, high anxiety, type A sort of people, and they just need to learn how to relax the pelvic floor.
It's a great explanation. All right, so what are some common forms of pelvic floor dysfunction if you have an underactive pelvic floor?
So people with an underactive pelvic floor generally tend to be, like I was saying, the older age demographic, and they just need a little bit more strengthening. These people usually have some sort of issue with incontinence or leaking. They might also have issues with erections, like getting an erection or maintaining an erection. They might also experience weak ejaculations or weak orgasms, just a little less power than they're used to. People with an overactive pelvic floor, these people generally have some sort of pain complaint, whether that's just chronic perineal pain or painful erections or painful ejaculations. These people also might have some dribbling, not like leaking like we were just talking about. Dribbling is you go to the bathroom, you finish peeing, and you just dribble a little bit. That kind of might even wet your outerwear. These people also may have bowel issues like constipation or hemorrhoids or fissures, tiny little tears in the rectal canal. These people might also have premature ejaculation. The high anxious people generally tend to have issues with getting off too soon. So generally, these people just need to learn how to relax their pelvic floor.
So I have a question for people who have an underactive pelvic floor. So let's say it's a guy who's in his 50s and he didn't used to have any pelvic floor issues. Erections were fine, orgasms were fine, no incontinence issues. Is this just a symptom of getting older, or is it a sign of, is it a lifestyle thing, or what's causing it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just a function of getting older. Just like every other muscle in our bodies, the pelvic floor can atrophy and get weaker over time. And so it's important to maintain that sort of strength as well. But also just general lifestyle factors like your level of activity or nutrition can also play a role in pelvic floor function.
Got it. So age is a reason, overall age, just getting older, could be a reason why pelvic floor function is decreasing, but it's not a death sentence. And
Right.
yeah, okay, that's good to know. And then for an overactive pelvic floor, so if you are too stressed, if you're high strung, what are some things, lifestyle things, that those people should be on the lookout for that would indicate that they've moved from a point of healthy sexual function to now they're so stressed that they have limited sexual function?
So these people might have issues getting an erection because the muscles are too tight. They might have issues with premature ejaculation or getting to an orgasm too quickly. These people might also have issues with just general pain. Things in the pelvis hurt. Genital pain, perineal pain, tailbone pain. The muscles are just so tight that they're causing all of this tension through the pelvis.
Got it. So it sounds like it's really important that you do the right exercises, because if you're using the muscles too much, if you're overactive, and then we just give you more strengthening exercises, you're probably making it worse.
Right. This is a common complaint that I hear in the clinic. People that have been told that they have one set of symptoms and they need to do 1,000 Kegels every day, and then they come into my clinic because their symptoms, multiplied times 10 after they've been doing these exercises for, a couple months. And so it's really important to do to know which exercises you need to do so that you don't exacerbate your symptoms.
Got it. And do you have to go into a clinic to address these, or are there exercises that you can learn to do at home to work on your issues?
Yeah, there are absolutely exercises that you can learn to do on your own. It's always helpful, just like every other condition, to be assessed by a medical professional, but there are things that you can do to start your journey towards getting back to a normal life.
Got it. So let's go through the overactive pelvic floor issues. So the first one is premature ejaculation. What is premature ejaculation?
So premature ejaculation is pretty much whenever you get to an orgasm too quickly and it causes distress for you and your partner. Usually that's a function of a pelvic floor muscle that's way too tight, and so the level of tension that it takes to get to an orgasm, the threshold's much lower, so people get off too quickly.
Hmm. Premature ejaculation is also a purely relative thing, though, right? Because you could classify something as premature ejaculation. If you don't last as long as you want to, then that's technically premature ejaculation.
Right. The AMA definition, or the American Medical Association definition, is any orgasm that occurs too quickly that's distressing for you or your partner. There's no specific time limit that classifies premature ejaculation as too early.
Interesting. What is erectile dysfunction?
Somebody who has erectile dysfunction with an overactive pelvic floor, those people are holding so much tension in the pelvic floor that the penile tissue is not able to get enough blood flow into the penis. They're just walking around like this. Our muscles have to be able to contract and relax to allow blood flow into the tissue. And whenever these people are just walking around with a tightly clenched pelvic floor all day, whenever they need to get an erection, they're not able to get blood flow into the tissue.
So erections are a weird function of needing to be able to relax to allow the blood flow in, but then also requiring strength to maintain the erection.
Yeah, it's a tricky phenomenon. People need to be able to relax to allow blood flow in, but the pelvic floor muscles, part of their job is to maintain an erection to hold the penis at attention whenever it's go time.
What about constipation? How does that have to do with pelvic floor?
So constipation with people with an overactive pelvic floor, generally these people, again, their muscles just never relax. And so if you think about whenever we have bowel movements, the anal sphincter has to be able to relax to allow stool to pass through. And if people are walking around with a clenched pelvic floor and they go to the bathroom and try to sit down and they're not able to relax the pelvic floor because it's just so tight, then these people generally have bowel movements that are tiny little shoestrings or little shoelaces. They're super thin, not fully formed. And sometimes it can be really painful and can lead to hemorrhoids or fissures, tears in the rectal canal because they're straining so hard.
So tight ass is not just a figurative term.
No, it's an actual phenomenon in my field.
What is dribbling?
Great question. So dribbling is this phenomenon where you're standing at the urinal, you finish peeing, you walk away, you put everything away, you're washing your hands, and a little bit more urine comes out. It might wet your underwear, it might wet your outerwear. It's more than just like a drop or two after you finish peeing. It's like enough that causes distress that is visible in your underwear or outerwear.
Last common condition of an overactive pelvic floor is pain with sex. So what would that look like?
Pain with sex or sexual activity can be anything like painful erections, painful ejaculation. These people generally, again, have a tightly clenched pelvic floor, and we need to sustain a general tone in the pelvic floor at all times, but it's kind of like if you go run a marathon and then shortly after you try to go and jog, you might cramp up. It might get a Charlie horse in your calf. That same principle is like the pelvic floor is already working so hard to do its job from a day-to-day basis, and then you're causing it to go and sprint, and that can cause some irritation to the tissues and lead to trigger points or spasms, and those spasms are what cause the pain with erections and ejaculation.
How's it different from a burning sensation?
So burning sensation, when we think of burning sensation, it's more of like a nerve pain issue. If it's purely muscle, then it's more of like an ache or a cramp or a spasm, a dull sort of pain. But burning, tingling tends to be more of like a nervy related issue.
Really quick question. Is it normal to have some soreness after sex? Is that a sign of dysfunction, or is that just a sign that, oh, those muscles worked?
So soreness, depending on, if you're going for a marathon sex session, sometimes it's normal to have some soreness after orgasm or after erection, getting an erection for that long. But the fine line between soreness and pain, sex is supposed to be enjoyable. We shouldn't have pain with erections, regardless of if it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes. We should never have pain. And so soreness might be considered normal depending on what you're doing for sex. But if it's tiptoeing into the realm of pain, then yeah, that's not normal. It might be a sign of pelvic floor dysfunction.
Got it. So all those things that we just went through are overactive forms or forms of overactive pelvic floor dysfunction. And for these people, we want to work on relaxing.
Right. We need to work on down training, relaxing, flexibility through the hips and the pelvis.
Cool. All right. Stick around for the rest of the video because we're going to tell you the exact exercises that you need to, how you can find those if you have an overactive pelvic floor. Cool. Now let's talk about an underactive pelvic floor. So first thing on our list here is erectile dysfunction. How would you have an underactive pelvic floor and erectile dysfunction?
So if you have an underactive pelvic floor, these muscles need a little bit more strengthening. So the pelvic floor muscles have to be able to contract. There are two main muscles in the front of the pelvis that are responsible for getting and maintaining an erection. And if they're not strong enough to maintain that erection, sometimes that's where people aren't even able to get an erection. So getting an erection is really hard, or really difficult, rather.
It's not really hard.
Right. It's also possible that if somebody's gone through some sort of cancer treatment, the tissues, like radiation or some sort of surgery, there might have been nerves damaged or the radiation might have fried some of the tissues. So these people also just need a little bit more strengthening to get that motor control back.
And these people are typically older.
Generally tend to be 50 and plus.
Got it. What about incontinence? What does incontinence have to do with a weak pelvic floor?
So incontinence, the pelvic floor muscles have to be able to maintain closure in order for us to be continent throughout the day. And just like every other muscle in the body, as we age, the muscles tend to get a little weaker. And sometimes people just need a little bit more strengthening of the pelvic floor tissues to be able to hold in urine throughout the day. But again, also if somebody's gone through some sort of cancer treatment, prostate cancer, surgery, or radiation, again, those tissues might be a little fried and they just need to work on motor control and strengthening to work on maintaining that continence again.
And then what if you have a weak erection or weak orgasm?
So somebody with a weak orgasm and a weak erection, again, there are two main muscles in the front of the pelvis that are responsible for those functions. And if over time the muscles get weaker, the intensity of their ability to do their job is going to decrease. And so being able to get an erection and maintain an erection is going to be difficult. And there's one specific muscle that allows us to ejaculate. And the intensity of that contraction is what we feel as an orgasm. And so if over time that muscle starts to weaken, that's where weak orgasms start to become more common.
Got it. So the common uniting theme of an underactive pelvic floor is a lack of strength. Are there exercises that we can do at home or other things that we can do to help strengthen the pelvic floor muscles?
So there are absolutely things that people can do at home to start strengthening their pelvic floor.
What do people need to focus on when it comes to strengthening their pelvic floor in exercise?
So breath work is really important, but also making sure that you're isolating the pelvic floor muscles specifically and not over-recruiting other muscles to compensate for the weakness in the pelvic floor muscles.
Got it. Okay, now that you've watched this video, you should have an idea of what types of exercises you need to do if you have pelvic floor dysfunction. For those exercises, we've actually created 2 10-minute workouts you can follow along to. Links for those are in the description below. If you have an overactive pelvic floor, which includes these issues, or if you have an underactive pelvic floor, which includes these issues, then click below for your video and start doing the workout. And hopefully within a few weeks, you should notice those symptoms improving. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like the video, comment if you have some feedback or another question, subscribe if you haven't already, and then go follow Lance.
You can find me on YouTube at Lance in Your Pants, Instagram, TikTok, also at Lance in Your Pants, or you can check out my website, flexptatl.com.
All the links for that in the description below. Guys, thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful. And then if you need that video, here is the video. Click over here for underactive pelvic floor. Work on strengthening that pelvic floor.